Hello, YouTube friends, Facebook family. We want to thank you for joining us. And here we are with Jim Stevenson. We're going to listen to his testimony. It's a life, a transformation that you had. And maybe there's some listeners that are out there because we're going to talk about addiction, talk about how, Jim, you got to a spot in your life where you thought it was all over and you came this close to taking your life.
Yes.
So we're going to get to that. But first, why don't we start from the beginning, how it all began? You were just a young teen, right?
Yes.
When you first became addicted to cigarettes. So share with us a little bit, how did that happen?
I had grew up going to church, and I went to church school 4 years, and we moved a lot, so we were kind of moving to different churches, different schools and stuff, and in and out of church. In my later teenage years, we had kind of got to where we weren't going to church, and my relationship with God had just dwindled to nothing. And at about 15, I got started smoking. And by the time I was 17, I was fully addicted to cigarettes.
So you're 17. How much cigarettes were you smoking at the time?
Easily a pack a day.
Okay. So this would go on for pretty much decades,
Yes.
right? This addiction.
Yes.
There was times here and there that you struggled to try to quit, right? But still, things will get even worse.
Yes.
So you're 17. Shortly afterwards, you get married.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
and you begin a new family, right?
Yes.
And so you go from cigarettes, and then you start getting into this thing called marijuana or weed.
Yes.
And so how did you even get into that? Because you had in the background a little bit of religious background at a young age. You kind of forget about God, get into cigarettes, and now you're getting into weed.
Yes. It's kind of like bad choices.
So Jim, you start a new family, but now you get into the use of marijuana.
Yes.
Okay, and was this something that was known with your family? Were you doing it secretly, or was this kind of like just a cool thing?
It was just bad choices led to bad choices, and it seemed like instead of turning the right direction and turning back to God, I just kept looking for, I guess, peace and happiness in the world, and to the point that marijuana became my answer for the bad decisions that I had made. And I started out as more recreational use, probably when you were with certain friends and things, and then it eventually developed into a full habit that my smoking marijuana was basically like smoking cigarettes. It was a daily thing, all day, from time I got up to the time I went to bed.
So that's interesting, because before you really got deep into this addiction with marijuana, you had an event that happened to you by the riverside.
Yes.
And it was kind of like you making promises to God.
Yes.
Share with us what happened that day. You're with some friends. You're out there to have a good time, and you actually almost lose your life. What happened?
I actually went to try to help someone else that I seen was in trouble, and I had warned places to stay away from in the river that was danger spots, and this particular person got over towards that spot, and I seen he was in trouble, and so I went after him to help him, and as I was approaching him, he he grabbed me and shoved me under the water as I was telling him to not panic, to calm down, but I didn't realize just how terrified he was at that point. And so he forced me under, got me choked on water, and he was holding me under.
Mm.
So my first quick thought was, I've got to get him off of me. If I'm going to save either one of us, I got to get him off of me, holding me under, and get him closer to shallow water and towards the bank. And then I guess I would deal with myself. And which I did. I finally got him off of me, pushed him up towards the shallow water, which he was able to get out. But then it pushed me further out into the strong current, which pulled me under. And by God's grace, he nobody there even knew I was drowning. I was at my last breath. I went under and thought it was my last time, and God pulled me out. He got me to the bank, and he saved my life when nobody, if he hadn't have, I wouldn't be here today.
So you kind of blamed the cigarettes because you're saying if it wasn't for these cigarettes, my lungs would be better. So
Yes.
you pretty much crushed them and decided it's over.
Yes.
But again, fast forward, now you're smoking weed, right?
Right.
How did you keep up the habit with? How did you pay for the weed?
Once I got started smoking marijuana, at first, like I say, recreational, it wasn't that big of expensive of a habit. But as I needed more and more of it to get to high, then it was costing more and more. And I figured out I can sell it and be able to provide for my personal use, and have some cash money left over. And so I became a dealer and started selling it, and that way it kind of took care of itself.
Okay, so you're able to support your habit, and you're starting a new family. Kids are growing up through the years, and now you get into something even stronger.
Yes.
Okay, so cigarettes, weed, and now you're getting into crack,
Yes.
cocaine. Explain what's going on.
It's like once you dig your hole and you're in it, you just start existing in it, and you just keep pushing through life, and you become more miserable, but you don't do anything to get out of it, and you just keep going, and you think this is the path I chose, this is where I'm at, and you keep going. And my dealer that I went to get my marijuana kept offering for me to try some cocaine, and I kept telling him no. And but life had done became such a, it was just not what I'd ever thought it was going to be. And I finally agreed to try it. And once I tried some lines of cocaine, they said, well, let us show you another way that you can get a better high off of it, and which showed me how to cook it up and to smoke crack cocaine. And so I started that out, but that wasn't like cigarettes or marijuana. That got a hold of me really fast. I'm talking in weeks. I was addicted to that, and it was totally different.
Now, the dealer that you worked with. Now, he wasn't out there for your own good, for your best interest.
No.
And what viewers need to understand is that the way that this works is that they try to make you try it, because the more people that are trying, the more people that get addicted, and it raises their funds because now you're buying from them, you're hooked. So sometimes people don't realize how addictive these things can be. You
Yes.
know, we might try it for recreation and say, well, I'm not really addicted, nothing really happened, I'm good, I had a good time. We try it a second time, right? And before you know it, we're hooked. So
Right.
that's what happened to you. You're addicted. Now, when it came to the weed, you were able to sell in order to keep up with your habit.
Right.
So how did you keep up with the cost of now this new drug?
There was no way to be able to keep up with the cost of it. Um, I had maxed out our credit cards, had used up our savings account, and this is all in a short time. This is within months. This ain't years. This is in a very short time. That drug is so addicting, and then it was finally to the point that my paycheck for the next week that I hadn't worked yet was already, they were fronting me the cocaine on my next week's paycheck before I even worked. And I knew then I was in some serious trouble, that I had really brought myself down to about the lowest spot in my life.
So who's paying for the mortgage and for the house, for the car payments, insurance? How are you managing your finances?
It, like I say, all this happened so rapidly and within months that that was what was about to happen. Was I wasn't going to be able to make the house payment or pay the bills or anything. I knew where I was at and I knew what was coming, but there was this voice in my head that just would not, where I always paid my bills and all with the cigarettes and marijuana. This drug was different, and it just, it made you feel you had to have it and you could not shut the voice in your head.
So your wife is noticing this and she tries to intervene?
Yes, she contacts the dealer and says, look, we're about to lose everything. If you sell him any more cocaine, then I'm going to report you to the police department.
Okay.
And but he didn't listen to her, and he continued on. And so I reached a point. It was like, you've got yourself in so deep now, you're not going to be able to just walk away. I knew where other people wound up with
Yes.
that same addiction, and I knew that's where I was headed, and I did not want to go there.
So your life begins to spin, spin, and spin out of control. You grab a revolver and tell us what happened there.
I mean, it had got to the point I couldn't even function through the day at my job or anything because of this voice pushing me to do whatever it took to go get the drug. And so after battling this for several weeks and knew what was coming, I came home one night and I said, I'm going to stop that voice in my head one way or another. So I went to the bedroom, closed the door, reached in the nightstand, got a revolver out, and I was really to the point I was going to put it to my head and to stop where I had got myself to, because I really at that point didn't see any other way out.
Yeah.
And something impressed me. I knelt beside the bed. I laid the gun up on the bed right beside me, and I started praying. And it was almost like the prayer was God-led, that it wasn't even coming from me. And I admitted to him my past mistakes. I confessed my sins. I told the Lord that I thought I had the world by the tail, that I knew better before I got myself in this situation, and I pleaded with him to deliver me from the voice in my head, the addiction of the drugs, that he was I only had two choices at that point, and I was choosing him and asking him if he would intervene and help. And I cried and I pleaded, and through that time, I felt like something was happening. I ended my prayer, and when I finally got up, the voice was gone. The addiction was not only gone from the crack cocaine, but marijuana. I could tell when I stood up, I was a different person. It was, if there's ever a salvation experience, that was a salvation experience. The Lord changed me, and he changed me in an instant.
So you cry out to God, and you no longer are taking the crack cocaine. You're no longer smoking the weed,
No.
and so now time goes on.
Yes.
Your relationship, your marriage, your home. There's things there that break down. You go through a divorce, and you get remarried. But even though God was able to help you with the addiction of crack and the addiction of weed, you still were smoking regular cigarettes because I guess you felt that it was just really the main focus was the hard stuff, no?
Yeah, I mean it's like 30 years of you're taking the wrong paths, and you're slowly drifting further and further. And when the Lord delivered me that night, I got started back going to church, and I was ever thankful for him. And there was a lot of immediate changes come in my life, but I still don't believe I fully gave him, I did not give him my full heart. I was very thankful. I knew that I was free from the drugs, never had a problem after that, but it was like I still, at that point in my life, there were still other bad choices I made that were still there. That
Yes.
wasn't just as simple as a prayer, and that they could be took away in an instant. And so, yeah, I continued to battle with tobacco.
Now, when I read your story, something that I really like what you said. You try to help me understand how strong the addiction of cigarettes can be, and you compared it to like someone who may be overweight
Yes,
that is trying to lose weight, right?
yes,
And I could identify with that because yes, who doesn't want to lose weight, but it is not the easiest thing, right?
exactly.
And you mentioned just like there's a plethora of different kinds of diet plans that are out there that are trying to get you right.
Yes,
Pills, whether it's a certain kind of keto diet or plant based or whatever it may be. There's there's this difficulty, right, in overcoming nicotine. So you
yes,
used the gum, the patches, pretty much everything that's out there in the market.
yes,
So you get remarried, years go by. You're raising now not only, I mean, you have a mixed marriage in the sense that you're raising now two families or two kids because your wife has kids from a previous marriage.
right.
And how was that?
Um, it actually made me and her bond more, but in most cases, and most people we talk to, that's not the case. A blended family is one of the hardest things that you can get into, and Tammy and I both, my wife, had talked about it and said that, if we had had any idea how hard it would be, we probably would have never made that decision. But once we were in it, we were committed, and there was something special about our relationship that enabled us, and of course, I believe with God's help, that pulled us through it, and it just made us bond even
Hmm.
more. But I would not, if you're in a marriage, if you can make it work, you need to make it work. Exhaust all means to make it work before you ever get divorced and start getting into blended families or second marriages.
Okay, so the day came when your wife is going into the store. She's going to get you another pack of cigarettes, but she turns around and opens the car door And what is it that she asked you?
She had knew this was in 2009, and I had been telling her I was setting a quit date for January 1, 2010. And I'd really been praying about it and telling the Lord, you've brought me a long way, saved me from drowning, delivered me from drugs. You've built my relationship up with you where I have a daily prayer life, devotional life, but I was still smoking, and it's like the cigarettes have got to go, and I want a closer walk with you. So I started praying, and she knew that, and I told her my quit date. So that particular Friday, we pulled up at the store, and she did. She had normally just got out, went in, got us each a carton of cigarettes, and come back out, and we left. But she hesitated and asked me, "Do you want me to get you a carton of cigarettes?" And I thought, why in the world is she asking me this? This was like a week before Thanksgiving of 2009. And I'm like, why is she asking me this? Because she knows I'm not going to quit. And I thought, I reached for my pack in my shirt pocket. There was 2 or 3 cigarettes there. And whatever gave her the impression to ask me that gave me the impression to say, no, let me just, I'm going to give it a trial run this weekend because I've still got 5 weeks or better left before my actual quit date, and I'll kind of see how I do. Like I was going to test God, I guess. I don't know. Or I was still thinking it was going to be myself. And I finished those 3 or 4 cigarettes that evening, that Friday evening, and never smoked another cigarette after that.
Incredible. So you put your trust in God. You're finally delivered from this strong addiction that went on since you were only 15 years old.
Absolutely, yeah.
So now you're completely free from any addiction. Life seems to be going well,
Yes.
but then tragedy hits your mom, your mother-in-law,
Father-in-law.
father-in-law, excuse me, and then take us from there.
Both of them pass in 2019, my mama in June, my father-in-law in December, and me and her was working through that. And of course, everybody knows the beginning of 2020, the COVID came in, and so that was a whole new stress for everyone, basically worldwide. So we were dealing with it and with our losses, and then she had a knot that came up underneath her arm, and we thought it was a cyst. We took her to the doctor, and they checked it and did a biopsy. They started not to. They thought it was just a cyst, and the doctor had second thoughts and said, let me do a biopsy. And it came back that it was stage 4. Well, actually, it was metastasized cancer. They didn't know where it had came from, but they knew it had came from somewhere else in her body. And so then they ordered a brain scan and a full body PET scan, and they both came back, and she had cancer just about in every organ in her body. It was in her brain, in her liver, in her kidneys, in her bone, and they said there was nothing. It was on her 51st birthday. We went to the oncologist office to get the results of that, and he basically told us there was not anything they could do.
Jim, there's folks that are watching this, and we probably all know someone that got cancer, who smoked. I knew someone personally who after finding out he had cancer, he continued to smoke. They had to make 2 holes here for him, one to breathe and one for the liquid food to come in. But his view was, well, I'm going to die anyway. I'm going to continue to smoke. But in the case of your wife, I would say a miracle happened, because upon finding out, she decides to quit right there. But then God begins to move upon her, right? Because she was not attending your church.
No.
She was not really having what we would say a religious life, or or we can say a churchgoer. She supported you in your religious, right, in your religious life and seeking God. But that's when the few weeks that you had with her, you guys really talked about God and Jesus, salvation. And Jim, I actually had an opportunity to witness that and to speak to her in those last few weeks. And can you share, just to finish here with the program, what did she decide when it came to the person of Jesus?
She always loved the Lord. Her father was a Baptist minister, and she didn't go to church regularly, but she loved people. She would do anything for anybody. Where you said about her not going to church, she probably just about didn't need to, because we talked about the Bible so much. A lot of our conversations were over the different religions and the different beliefs and what the Bible taught. And so we had these conversations almost daily. And so but there was things she was torn about because of so many different religions and all. And but she did have a faith in God. And I told her, I said, after we found out and I seen she was going down, and my prayer was for the Lord to heal her. And I more physically is what I was thinking at the time. And then as I seen within the next 5.5 weeks, she was dropping so fast that I just started praying for the Lord's strength for both of us and for His will to be done. And I asked her how she would feel about an anointing service, and she was yes. I mean, she wanted it as bad as she was feeling. At that point, her all her hair was already gone, had been shaved out because she had taken one chemo treatment that they said would help, but it didn't. And normally she would not want to be around people and all, but she wanted to have the anointing service, which we did, and which you came out and performed. And I think it deeply moved her heart. And I think we both knew it wasn't as much as a physical healing that we were seeking, but to make sure she was spiritually healed and where she needed to be at with God, because we knew her days were coming winding down.
What an amazing story. Thank you, Jim. We are just always amazed what God can do in the life of someone. And Jim, now you are a deacon serving at a church, at the Cartersville Seventh-day Adventist Church. And we look forward to the resurrection. We look forward to the second coming of Jesus. So Jim, thank you so much for sharing that.
Yes.
And thank you everyone for joining us. May God bless you guys. And we hope to see you again for the next testimony. God bless.